You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
That came to mind is, and so I kind of wanted to bring this to the surface, is I think it's easy, and I certainly fall into this at times, it's easy for me to freak out about, well, you know, if I'm talking to somebody that I see in some form or fashion is more successful than me, is for me to kind of get stuck in my own mind of like, I don't know what are the ABC steps to take them to the next level because they're more successful than I am. But that's maybe more of a consulting mindset. A consulting, as I define it, is I have a process and a system that will get somebody a specific outcome, pretty much guaranteed, because, you know, so many of the consultants, when you look at, even in the coaching world, you know, people advertise, you know, we guarantee X amount of, you know, you get 5 clients tomorrow by these strategies that we'll teach you. Like, that's not really coaching. That's more of consulting, because it's like they've got this specific process that you will have this specific outcome, or at least that's what they're trying to sell. But coaching has a system, but the outcome is a lot more unpredictable, I would say, in some respects, or less tangible is maybe a better way of saying it. And so when you find yourself thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to help this person, you know, be more successful? I think there's a value to being able to assess, are you thinking about like your role with this person as more of a consultant? Like, are you putting yourself out there? Are there expectations that they're, you know, you're going to give them a specific result? So let's say like health coaching, are you saying that you're going to give them a certain amount of weight loss or something in a certain amount of time? Or is part of your process helping their mindset shift so that the other things will naturally come? I don't know. I mean, I know I'm creating a dichotomy here, but I think it's useful to think about that, because if you're stuck in the consulting mindset, you may not have the confidence, you may not have the experience to have the confidence that you're going to be able to get them X, Y, Z specific results. But if you're in the coaching side, you know, like for example, so let me use an example, marriage and divorce. So I have a master's in marriage and family therapy. And so one of the challenges that I would get when working with couples is they would come to me, usually one spouse more than the other would say, you know, fix our marriage. Like, you know, we want to stay, right? Like they're looking to me to kind of, what I would say is be more of a consultant. Like, we have this defined outcome, specific outcome that we want, and you need to be the one to step us through the process to get there. Now I'm happy to go through, you know, the core aspects of what makes a marriage healthy and all of that sort of stuff. But there is no stinking way I'm guaranteeing them that they're going to stay married. That is not my judgment call, you know. So if I'm basing the success of my counseling or my coaching around relationships and marriage based on if somebody stays together or not, I might not have a great amount of confidence in that, because we all know the divorce rate. We all know, I mean, that's a beast. But if I can base my sense of confidence on something else, not that specific material outcome, but rather, you know, the growth of understanding what healthy relationships look like, or you know, some different things like that, then maybe that can help feed my confidence in what I've done and how I can help people, so that when that next couple comes and says, we're a hot mess, you know, so-and-so cheated and just all the crazy stuff that happens, I can have confidence, not necessarily that they're going to stay married, but I can have confidence that I can help each one grow in a way that they can make more mature decisions and they can take responsibility for the things that they did or didn't do. So I feel like at this point, I'm just babbling. So I'm going to
No. You brought up an incredible point. It's such a powerful point. And we've actually had a couple of conversations in coaching master community around this specific area, around confidence and around how do we challenge clients who are at a higher level, quote unquote, more successful than us. And you brought up quite a few points. So
I know.
There are a few things and they're all very important. So the first area is around success. So we have a specific perception of success, right? And that's why when I initially shared it, external success, I mentioned external success because that's important, because the way, especially the North American culture works, is that we define success a lot of times, generally speaking, collectively on the external success. Is like, okay, what is this person doing in their career? What appears on the outside, basically. And that might or might not. And this, what's tricky about that is that might or might not be true, because somebody could have an incredible house, great cars, they will be utterly in debt. And then they look like they're very rich. But
one thing goes wrong and they have to file bankruptcy. Like,
yeah, it's a very common thing. And then there's, I mean, one of the things that I follow a few business people, and they talk a lot about people who create the appearance of being rich in a lot of ways, but they don't actually have the abundance that they claim to have. And that's very important to understand, because that's showing confidence. A lot of marketers do this. They will show a lot of cars and all sorts of things behind them. And that's one of the reasons why I love Brendon Burchard from the beginning, that he didn't show off that stuff. He spoke from a very different place, because that's one aspect of success. It's important, but it's one aspect of success. So we need to be very, as coaches, we think we're immune to these things, but we're not. We live in the same soup that everybody else lives in. We will be affected by that. So the way we frame the question is really important, and the way we think about these words are really important. So we need to be careful as to how we define success. So for example, and a lot of people, it's kind of clickbait type of topic, is like CEO. I don't look at the difference between CEO athlete or any other general human being, because they have areas that they are very successful in. They have areas that they're horrible at. So as an example, I'm working with a CEO right now who has an incredible amount of abundance. She doesn't have to work at all. Like, she has a lot of time on her hands. She has a lot of time. She has a lot of money, but here's where she's poor at. She has no fulfillment. Her relationships are broken, and she doesn't feel anything. But the way she describes is that she feels numb a lot of times. And that's not a judgment towards it. That's just an observation, what she's described to me. And so she's rich in one area, but she's poor in another area. Now, I also know of people who are incredibly poor in terms of their bank balance systems and all sorts of things, but they're rich in other areas. But they don't realize the value, because society kind of explains things in kind of blanket type of way, and we're not taught to think about it in different ways. And obviously there's a balance point in all these, and it will be different for everybody, because everybody has a different vision for their life. Yeah. So that part is really important. And the way I look at it is that coaches do have an expertise. They have a specific expertise. So if you look at it from an expertise point of view, it's really important, because I might not have an expertise in business per se, but I have expertise in creating and walking people through a discovery, to get them to go deeper into their own thought processes, to get them to observe things that they might have not noticed, to get them to go deeper into their emotions, to get them to go back in their past and pull out things that they haven't even thought about yet, because they're so busy doing other things. Just that skill set in itself is incredibly valuable. On top of that, coaches tend to be very well versed in mindset tips and all sorts of things, so they can navigate that area very well. They can ask questions. So there are a couple of different quality types of questions. One could be a very open-ended question. And usually the strategy calls that we do, they need to have a lot of open-ended questions, because we're trying to get to know a person. But as soon as you get to know somebody, the questions become a little bit more directed. So let's say we find out that their energy is off. One of the things that the coaches might do is they go towards it, like, how does your morning look like? How do you start your morning? And the reason why we ask is because we have certain knowledge about it, because if they're starting their morning in a frantic way by checking their email, just responding constantly to everybody, that might be a place. Or we might ask about how are your relationships going? Tell me a little bit about that area, because we know that's a huge drain on your energy. How is this other area? Because we have certain specific knowledge that we consistently think about. So just those two areas, and there are many other areas coaches have expertise in that most other people don't know. It's normal to us, but we don't realize that most people don't have this level of self-reflection a lot of times. Even those who do, they can't, and this is where I tend to work with a lot of people who've done a lot of work, actually. So I veer away from giving a lot of kind of tips and advice some coaches do. And there's nothing wrong with that, because some people just are not aware. I veer away from that because they already know a lot of the stuff, probably even more than me a lot of times.
Right.
So I go more towards discovery. I go much more towards discovery, and along the way, I'll be sharing tools and some things and experiences and helping them see things that they haven't seen yet. That's where a lot of my strength is as a coach. Just that in itself is worth a lot to people that I work with, because it helps them think about their life and business in ways they haven't thought of them yet. So that expertise part is really, and coaches need to constantly develop. And what we're talking about is human behavior. What we're talking about human psychology. What we're talking about is a process of thinking through things. What we're talking about is a reflection. These are normal things that coaches do.
Yeah. And as you guys are listening to this, I think we talked a little bit about, external success and different things like that. As I work with people, it's the way that I'm perceiving it is when I feel intimidated, or when I have one of those moments where all of a sudden I feel less than, and I don't feel quite as worthy about myself or about what I can do. When I have those little moments in my brain and in my spirit, that would be a signpost to me that I'm interacting with somebody that I'm putting this assumption around that somehow I can't help them, or somehow they're better. I'm going to use the word better than me, because sometimes that's what the language we use. But so if you guys notice that you're intimidated by somebody, like, sit with that for a little bit, explore what's going on. What is it about that person that is intimidating you? And that might be an opportunity for you to really, well, first of all, work with that person or somebody like that person to kind of get through that, to be able to show yourself, demonstrate yourself that what you do as a coach really supersedes whatever it is that is intimidating you. And so they know, like, as I was talking about, kind of some of the things that he's realized are what is the foundation for his power as a coach. It doesn't matter any of those other things. It doesn't matter if they're independently wealthy at this point or financially free. It doesn't matter if they're an Olympic athlete and they're in the best shape of their life. It doesn't matter that they're an 80-year-old couple that have been happily married their entire life. Like, there's still opportunities for helping somebody grow and improve. And so just that intimidation piece, I encourage you all to recognize throughout your day or when you're interacting with somebody, because I think that's a key indicator that there's an opportunity for you to level up and grow.
And that's a very normal feeling, by the way, for human beings, because whether we like it or not, we will compare. Our mind will compare us to other people. The question is, can you put a pause on that? The question is, can you assess it in that moment? Can you work through the emotions around that? And that's what coaches need to be good at least. And the other part of expertise that we talk about, so there are general expertise that coaches have, but then this is where the advancement in coaching comes in, niche comes in coaching, is that there are certain areas based on your experience you'll be very good at compared to other coaches. For example, for me, I've spent a good 15 years trying to discover, what does it mean to be my core self? What does it mean to connect to who I am? And most of my coaching actually goes towards that. It sounds self-awareness. It doesn't mean anything, but most of my coaching goes very deep into, because most of the surface things that I see it as a deeper problem. So I will go towards an exploration. I don't even, like, if I see a problem around productivity, I'll go deeper. Sometimes I'll stay at the surface. There are normal things that you can deal with, but I tend to go very deeper. So it naturally goes towards emotions. It naturally goes towards their spiritual life. It naturally goes towards their purpose and legacy. It goes towards more existential stuff for me. And that's connected. I've had a huge interest in philosophy. I've had a huge interest in history, in human development, human consciousness. These are things that I'm deeply interested in. And they became a part of my practice, my study. So I tend to attract people who want to go deeper into those areas. But then I know other coaches who are incredible at productivity. That becomes their niche area. And I probably can't even compete with them in that area. I don't want to, because that's not something I care that much about. I see productivity as one component of a bigger whole. So an understanding, first of all, being open that you have certain expertise. And then as you work more and more with people, you will develop that there are certain areas that you're good at and you can develop further because you have a deeper interest in that area.
You're looking at me expectantly, like.
No, I'm not. I'm just pausing. So that was a strategic pause. Not quite strategic, I guess, because you're like, what the hell do you want? That was an unstrategic pause. Well, let's put it that way. And so now coming back to confidence is really important. And this is why confidence, I think, has layers. And one of the conference we've been going into is that, and I think Dr. Sherry shared in her last video too, when she did it solo. So thank you for that. I got stuck last week with no connection. And one of the things that she talked about is competence loop. So a lot of what we're talking about is competence, and your competence in the field of human behavior, in the field of mindset, in the field of how to work through these thought processes, in the field of specific areas and coaching themes such as productivity, such as relationships, such as well-being. All these things make a difference. So keeping leveling up in that area. But then there's another level of confidence that goes deeper. It's your being and what you practice in your day-to-day life. That goes much deeper than competence loop in terms of a specific field. You could frame it in a way that that's your own internal competence loop about yourself. So here's the difference. The difference is that competence loop is very contextual. So you could be very confident as a coach or as an investor, but then if I take you and put you in a situation where you know nothing, how would you behave? What would you feel? Would you feel like, oh, I shouldn't go around that person? I feel like I should know this stuff before I talk to people. And that is important for you to think about, because, and I'll give you an example. So a lot of my clients are investors and they go out to these networking events. They're actually pretty confident in the field that they're in. Like there will be doctors, engineers, business owners in different fields, lawyers. And then they go there, all of a sudden the confidence is gone. And and I know that it's related to that specific thing. So my job is to actually help them develop a deeper level of confidence where the context shouldn't matter that much. So what I help them do is what I shared in the beginning, to become more curious, because they don't need to know something specific to be a great leader. They can leverage their life experience, their experience in the past. They can just show up in somewhere and not know anything and be like, I want to learn.
Yeah.
That's confidence.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.